Hello and welcome to Bringing Education Home. I'm Herb.
And I'm Christina. Together, we are bringing you ideas about education, entrepreneurship, and relationships that are both inside
and outside the box. If you like the show, be sure to follow Christina on Facebook
and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Today, we are catching up with an old friend, Mr. Rob Eastman. We met him in October at a mastermind, and he imparted some great wisdom to us. And we're so honored to have him come back and share again with us a little bit more and share with our audience about what we can do to help our kids learn and grow. Thank you, Rob, for being here today.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's good to see you guys' faces again. I had a great time when we were together the first time, so I'm honored to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about this whole entrepreneur journey and kind of where you are, how you're related to education as well.
Yeah. So if anybody's a redhead, they know we're built with a few extra gears and they usually don't fit into the school system. Super hyper. We don't focus very long, but my mom would say that straight out of the womb, I was not like any of her other kids. She would have to self-soothe me. I couldn't understand that skill. She'd put me to bed and she'd find me in a completely different place in the morning, never sitting still. And where there's not the structure in the home when you're little, it's just a kid, they'll outgrow it. The troubles really started when I hit school, when I had to sit still for more than 30 seconds, when tapping on the desk became a problem. And back in the 80s, teachers could hit the kids. They'd put a bar of soap in your mouth. They would slap you with a ruler. And so ultimately that just created this, something's wrong with me. I'm broken. I couldn't fit in with the kids in class because the teacher would bully me, which would give the kids the okay to bully me as well. So early on, I was getting sent to the principal's office. By the first grade, they said, if you don't get him under control, we're going to have to hold him back. Whoa. So I'm in and out of the doctor's offices. Wow. And I like to say I was the original Ritalin baby. Before Ritalin was a thing, I was one of the test dummies for it. And I think back, and one of the drills when I'd go into the doctors, I would hold my hands up and they would put tissue paper on my hands and they would judge my mood by how much I was shaking. And I'm looking back at it now, like, how is that even a medical thing? And they would put one of those like mood ring stickers on my forehead and read off what color it was, like just complete madness. Wow. And so by the second or third grade, it got to the point where I didn't learn like everybody else. Absorbing what you were saying, I'm a hands-on guy. I needed to use my hands. I needed to solve puzzles, and they don't do it that way. Wow. It's like, here's your direction, read the instruction. Like reading comprehension, probably still now is like, I don't know, maybe like a 7th grader. Like I don't learn that way. If I open a box that has instructions, the instructions go in the corner. I visualize what's in front of me and I put it together. So by the third grade,
part left over, you maybe look at the instructions. It's like, what is this thing? But yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So by the third grade, it had gotten so bad that I had started developing my first suicidal thoughts. And I knew that most of my trauma was coming from going to school, sitting in a classroom that I knew I couldn't sit still, that the kids were going to make fun of me, all these different things because I was different. Right. Which at that age, you feel broken. Mm-hmm. And you start developing insecurities. And so I like to say I became the Swiss Army knife. I was whatever you needed me to be. Okay. If this bully liked erasers that were cool to put on his pencil, I'd make my mom buy me some so I could bring him, give him some erasers, and so that he would be my friend. And if this kid liked, like I was good at soccer or whatever, like I just kind of became a chameleon and I could be whatever you needed me to be. Right. And hearing that come out of my mouth, I guess that's ultimately where my entrepreneurship came from. Mm-hmm. I just adapted. I was able to make friends, not keep them, but I could make friends and I could manipulate my teachers and get on their good side and know that I was this cute little redhead and I sucked at math and they'd pass me off because I was kind to her. All these different things of personal relationship and things like that. And it really, really affected me. So my ears stuck out and people would bully me. And it's right when Dumbo came out. Uh-huh. So they would call me Dumbo and all these things. And when you're little, all you want to do is fit in. And it just wasn't working. And so it was the summer between 6th and 7th grade. My we had an incident with an adult who was making fun of my ears, and they're like, oh my gosh, maybe he was telling the truth the whole time. So I went and got surgery so that I could go into 7th grade looking and feeling better. But by that time, the damage had been done. It didn't matter what you did to the outside. I was still rotting inside.
Right, the inside, the trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the only time that I would really focus was during sports seasons, because that was my only outlet.
Mhm.
My dad was an entrepreneur. He started out with, maybe you guys would remember these brands, Eagle, Renault,
Uh-huh.
and then we got into Jeep, Chrysler, Plymouth. So I'm seeing him creating all of these things, and then I'm going to school learning about how to be an employee, or like fitting in a box, being a worker bee. And I never felt whole that way. Same with religion for me. It just seemed like a long list of things that I couldn't do perfectly. So it just created more shame and doubt. And it just got to this point where eventually I got into drugs and alcohol. I tried to commit suicide multiple times before the 9th grade.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know, I grew up without grandparents. And one day when I used a gun to try and commit suicide, I played Russian roulette, and I ended up pulling the trigger twice. And the cops came and got me, took me home. And that was the first time my dad had let me know that his dad drove his truck off of a bridge and that his mother committed suicide. And that if I were to do that, he doesn't know what he would do. He might end up ending his life.
Mhm.
So in our religion, suicide was a no-no, drugs and alcohol were a no-no, but the emotional pain, we didn't talk about our feelings. Men didn't learn how to do that. And I was a little boy, and it just came down to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. And I was introduced to weed, and that took the pain away.
Yeah.
And the one thing that they don't tell you is that a little bit of weed now means a lot of bit of weed later to get the same result. And, you can fast forward 15, 20 years of just adding more and more and more. But once I got out of school and I went up to Utah State for school, and I sat in this massive room with probably 350 students in a lecture hall. And I remember I raised my hand, and the teacher looked up and he said, if you can't keep up, you do not belong in my class. And again, as a freaking college student, everybody's laughing. I packed my bag, I stood up, and I walked out. I went to the administration office and I withdrew, got my money back. I didn't tell my parents because I was letting them down again. And I bought a season pass to a local ski resort and a snowboard, and became a really good snowboarder.
Really good.
But as I got out,
Yeah.
and into the real world, it became very evident very quickly that I was not an employee.
Yeah.
My ideas didn't match. I could do things better than other people. The way they were doing them was like 6 extra steps. I could whittle them down, but the manager does not like to hear.
They do not like that at all.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
So to have these ideas, I was talking to my dad, and this is shortly after I got into recovery. And he just flat out said, he's like, you're a shitty employee. You need to find a way to make your own money.
Yeah.
And so we developed what I needed was a recovery plan, and he didn't know anything about recovery, but he did know about business. So we set some goals that had to do with interpersonal and also developing my skills. And one thing I found coming out of rehab was I was still really good at athletics.
Mhm.
And then the first 9 months of sobriety, my wife left me, the bank took everything I owned, and my dad died.
Oh boy.
And it was like the biggest slap in the face.
Mhm.
And I found that I needed the beautiful wife to make me feel good.
Mhm.
I needed the big truck and the big house to make me look good. And I needed my dad to pay for those things when I couldn't. And it was like, God's like, yoink, 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 it's time to walk on your own 2 feet. So it really made me sit back. And at that time, I couldn't afford a therapist. So I went and got a Pell Grant from the government. I went back to school, which I hated. But when I sat with the counselors, they're like, you need to test into math, English, science to see where you're at. And I'm like, that's not why I'm here. I'm like, I only want to take psychology.
Right.
And they're like pushing me to take these classes. And they're like, well, why are you here? I'm like, I want to know why I'm so messed up.
Mhm.
And they're like, well, okay, we wouldn't recommend it, but go ahead. So I took 2 psychology classes.
Mhm.
And as I'm sitting there in the class, I felt like they were talking about me. Everything in that book was like, dude, I'm looking around the room like, is he reading my bio? Like, what the hell? And I could retain like 95% of what he was saying in reading because I could apply it to something I had experienced. So as I went through it, I started going home, taking what I've learned in psychology and applying it to coaching people for free at the park, but using fitness as a way to teach people how to do hard things and applying the psychology like you would with a therapist, except we were taking action.
Yeah.
And I was working a shitty job. I had owned a concrete company before this. I had owned a Honda motorcycle shop. And I was great with people. I was not good at budgeting my emotions and budgeting time and like truly managing the company.
Right.
So we did well in the Honda shop. We ended up selling to a bigger company after 3 years. I bought the concrete company, never touched a trowel or a shovel in my life, other than to dig a hole to China when I was in like 6th grade. And I just figured it out. Like we went to the first concrete job, completely destroyed it. So then I called somebody who was in the industry. I had him come over and give us a lesson and fix my mess up. And I just started picking brains and hanging out with the guys that had already done it. It's like, we want to be the self-made guy so bad. It's like, you're not making shit. Unless you invented something, you're not the first guy to do it. So then I just became really good at putting things together, putting the right team together of how to make anything that I did happen. And then things started clicking with my dad. Like I was very terrible my entire life before he passed away. I didn't use the skills he taught me. I didn't understand. I didn't water the seeds he planted.
Right.
And then as I'm going, I started getting mentors and listening and using their plan. And I found that I'm a really great co-pilot. I'm a shitty driver.
Okay.
So
You need to
the
know
more I had these great ideas, rather than me running with it, I would take that great idea and I would give it to great men and women for them to poke holes in my theories, for them to show me what my passion was blinding me from seeing that could ultimately cost me my business.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really easy for 2 reasons. 1, I like to blame people. 2, if I did what they said and I failed, I could blame those people. But I quickly found that all of the ideas I had, when structured, I had more energy to just in this uber focused funnel of taking the steps that they told me to. And when I was done with those steps, I would go back and we would hit stage 2, stage 3. And since then I've started, owned and operated a lifestyles gym that we don't care. Fitness is just a way, again, for me to teach people how to do hard things in a safe environment.
Right.
And it's a small 2,000 square foot facility. You generally work with people who are looking to change their life, not change how they look, because when you look a certain way, it's not going to be what you thought it was. If you don't change the person inside, it's not going to work. So I would sit and apply all these psychology lessons inside of a chest workout or running in the mountains or whatever it would be. And it really took off because I found that if I left the people feeling better than I found them, they're going to want to come back.
Right.
And all that was teaching them that they're capable, that maybe what they're doing either in their relationship, their belief system, or the idea that we were taught that you have to go to school, go to college, get a degree, work a 9-to-5 job, maybe retire at 65, and then you have 10 years, 15 years of good living if you succeeded. Mm-hmm. In that, your kids are missing you. You probably got fired from the safe job that you were so secure in. And it's like this myth, this time heals all wounds, if you have a job and you pay the bills, then you'll be loved. It's like, how many of us have been in that marriage that we're providing, we're out, we're giving all of our time away. We walk in the door, our kids want our time, our wife want our time. We don't feel appreciated. And then this wedge starts happening. And you end up divorcing or hating the person that you were in love with, that you had a family with, that all of these things. And I think if we were to step it back and spend time finding out what that person is capable of at a very young age, and then pushing them into that space, how magical could our world be?
Exactly.
Yeah, bringing education home, that's part of our focus. That's part of a lot of what you said is why we're doing this. We want to bring the psychology in. We want to teach the children how to be people first, because once they start being people and they start understanding what being people is, then the love of learning just jumps from that. And then it's like, oh, this is peopling. And so
Exactly.
Our school isn't so much about teaching school. It's not about the reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's about the love of learning. It's about the psychology. It's about learning who you are and about your personality, and know that your personality isn't who you are, but the personality is the deck of cards that you get to use to build your character, because your character is who you want to be. Your personality is who you start out as. And that information is somehow lost, and people get so caught up in I, and they forget about the me and the all of me in the I. And so where you're doing what you're doing and the little bit of psychology you're bringing into it is just so fantastic and fabulous, especially at the young age. And the problems you had with school can be so easily addressed at smaller levels, and especially within the home, where
before they get to the big issues,
where your parents can, your mom knew. Your mom, if she had had coaching, could have directed into a much better education system than, hey, drugs and you're wrong and soap in the mouth and
I'm sitting there looking at the tree behind you, and that brings up the Einstein philosophy. If you judge a fish on how it climbs a tree, it will forever feel stupid. And it wasn't until I took my psyche eval at 31 years old to find out how I operate, how I learn, and how I'm most going to be successful. It was like a scale of like 70 is like mentally retarded, 110 is genius. And on the way they teach in school, I was an 80.
Right.
In problem solving, puzzles, hands-on, I was a 120.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, if I would have had visual aid, if I could have worked with my hands, if I could have gone in the direction of my greatness, where could I have been?
Exactly.
But
her little brother is not great with reading, not book smart at all.
Nope.
But give him a truck driver, tie stuff down, hands-on,
planning the route to make sure he hits all the spots at the right time.
That man is so competent at work and being there that he is so intelligent at that if he had been, oh, you're dumb because of the stuff in school, that would have just been devastating, because this man is so incredible, competent and smart, but there is no book there for him.
So that kind of brings me around to why I do what I do on the service side and working with youth and families. So I was married, and she had a son, and he played baseball. And we went to at this time I was a cage fighter, and so it's pretty intense. And so we go to his baseball game, and he had a double header, which is going to be like a 4-hour sit on a thing, in hopes that he might get up to bat, in hopes that he might get a catch. And I finally pulled him over at the end. I'm like, buddy, I love you. I want you to thrive. Like, let's pick a different sport. I will coach. I will do whatever necessary. And he thought about it. And of course, kids want to be on a team. And he's been on this team for like 5 years. And this new dad comes in and is trying to change things. And his dad wrestled. And so he's like, well, what about wrestling? I was like, game on, let's do that. So I went to the school for wrestling practice and showed up, and I was just going to volunteer my time. And I was turned down by the coach. He's like, you can't be around these kids. You got to have a background check, and you got to get your fingerprints and all that. And I was like, oh, no big deal. I was like 4 years sober at the time. And I go in and pay the fee and get my fingerprints done. And you'll hear back in the window of 2 weeks. And I heard back the next day, and it said, thanks, but no thanks. Your background is like, we can't have you around kids. And I'd been clean and working on myself for 4 years, and I had forgot about all my charges. So I printed off my background check, and it was 2 pages long. And it was like all drug related, like paraphernalia, DUI, all, no violent offenses. But I'm like, if I were some guy that's sworn to protect children, I wouldn't hire me either. But I'm also not going to sit back and be a piece of paper. So
Right.
I took my background check. I set an appointment with the guy who denied me. I sat down across his desk. I pushed my charges across the desk. I said, where would you like to start?
What do you want to
And I
know?
explained to
Clear it
him
up. Mhm.
how I was as a kid, the way I was treated by my teachers, the way I didn't learn like everybody else, and what I'd learned in the last 4 years. And by the end of the conversation, the guy was in tears and he stamped it approved and he said, we need more coaches like you. So that gave me the opportunity to start working inside the school with young men.
Uh-huh.
And when I went in there, I knew that my focus was nothing to do with wrestling and everything to do with interpersonal work. That if these boys had confidence,
Exactly.
if they could face their fears and not let it turn into anxiety, if they could speak openly to a coach who's not a cop, not a teacher, not your bishop, not somebody who's going to look down on you, but to give you a roadmap out of feeling that way,
Mhm.
then they're going to perform better for me. They're going to go to war every time they step in that circle on the wrestling mat.
Yeah.
And I had the most profound experience with these young men. It's like I got fixed after I had my daughter. So I only have the ability to have my daughter and anybody else that comes into my life. But here now I've adopted, like, I love these young men, like 22 boys from the ages of 13 to 15, like my own kid. I'm crying with them. I'm hugging them. I'm going to battle with them. I'm on the chair. They're in there just wishing I could be in there protecting them. And they saw the effect I had on these youth, and another school heard about it.
Uh-huh.
And they gave me the opportunity to be the head coach the following year.
Wow.
So fast forward a decade, I've been doing this now for 10 years inside of the schools. At one point, they gave me my own classroom. They had me come in, what they called was a tracker. So I would work with the kids that were failing, doing drugs, getting in trouble, whatever. And they wanted me to walk around, pull them out of class, show them their grades, set a plan to do more homework, and then move on to the next one. And I'm like, hey, look,
No.
they already feel different. They're going to feel dumb because people know what I'm doing in the school. So they get pulled out of class in the middle of class. I'm like, that's when I was like, give me a classroom.
Yeah.
So they do 4 periods a day. And then the last period, they call it wrap. And that's where they just go to a classroom. They can work on homework. They can, do whatever they need to do. So they would come to me for wrap.
Yep.
And I had some, multi-ethnic people, and I just got to know them. And most of the kids were coming to school to relax because their home life was so crazy.
Right.
Parents are on drugs, mom's at work all the time. They're raising their little teeny siblings. They have these extreme, the world called on them way too early. So I figured, like, what are they doing? They're reacting to everything.
Yep.
So how can I better help them not react? I'm like, I went to the librarian and I asked her, can I check out some chess boards? And these kids have never done anything like that. They're in gangs or whatever it is. And so I taught them how to play chess. And what does chess do? It's like, you can't just move a thing and hope that it worked out.
Strategic thinking.
You got to think 3, 4, 5 moves down the road, and there's consequences for every action.
Right.
So it started teaching these kids to think before they act.
Mhm.
And then they were listening to really terrible music
Mhm.
that just demeaned themselves, demeaned women, all these things. And I was like, I want you guys to write 15 bars, and it's a positive rap about your mom. And they're looking around the room like, what? You're going to let us rap? I'm like, yeah, and it's due tomorrow. I didn't know what had happened, but they came back. 90% of the room had written something. And we put a beat on, and they were rapping about the positive things that they had learned from their mother. And the kids were like cheering for each other, and they were so pumped. And so we ended up writing like 1 rap a week about different aspects of positivity in their life, or things that they learned from the negativity. You don't have to see, if your mom's not doing her job, don't let that get you down. Let that show you what not to do. Like, sometimes it's a good influence, sometimes it's a bad influence, but either way, it's an influence, and it can influence you to good. We don't have to wear those traumas. So between chess and writing raps, I ended up getting not in trouble, but one of the other teachers is coming in and she's hearing us rap and watching us play games all day. She's like, these kids are failing. You're not doing your job. And she went and got the principal. So he comes over, pulls me out of class, and all my guys are like, oh, coach is in trouble.
Right.
And I'm laughing, walking out. I'm like, man, I'm getting deja vu. And I go out there and he's like, hey, I heard you guys are playing games and not doing much homework. And I shared that same thing. I'm like, principal, what are these kids' biggest mistakes? They act out in class, they make bad decisions. And I just went through the list of reasons why they're in there. And I shared a little bit about their background, which most teachers can't get into that because parents are too, like, you don't talk to my kid about personal stuff. You teach them math. That's all you are.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I crossed some boundaries. It was worth it. But I shared with him, like, what does chess teach you? He's like, to think in advance, to play the tape to the end.
Right.
Okay. How does getting in tune with these kids, if they like rap, that getting them to write positive things, you're not going to get them to write a poem. You're not going to get them to write in their journal, but it's the same damn thing. I found what they liked. I had them get good at it. And now we're doing that. And he's like, I like what you're doing. Keep doing it.
Nice.
And so he kind of gave me the green light to start doing some different things. And I was studying this guy out of Australia. He's a principal. He was in prison. And he did something with the kids that he guaranteed them no homework. They worked hard and they focused in class and were getting X amount of grades that they would not have to do homework. And he had this amazing relationship with like 1,000 kids that looked at him like a father. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go present this to my principal.
Right.
Because the kids are sleeping in class. They're not putting in the work. Like, you got to be there. You might as well do something while you're there, is kind of how I pitched it to the kids. But I went to the principal. I said, hey, I want you to come in and I want you to sit on these desks with these kids. And I want you to look them in the eye and say, if you kids put in effort while you're at school, I will tell your teachers that you are free from homework. And he's like, he was a straight-laced Utah guy. And he's like, man, I might lose my job if I do this. I'm like, let's just try it for one term.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, comes in. And these kids are like 5, 6, 7 Fs. Like they weren't going to pass regardless, doing what we had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in and he's trying to be cool. He takes his tie off and unbuttons his shirt. Like,
right.
He was so clean cut and nerdy that it
Trying
just
to make
wasn't
the
good.
connection.
Yeah. And he looked him in their eyes. And I talked to the kids about it. I said, will you promise me if he comes in here and tells you guys that you don't have to do homework, that you will promise me that you will work your ass off in class? And they promised up and down. They're like, we'll do anything, coach. And he came in, he sat down and he did that. And let me get emotional.
Yeah.
So it's grade, the day for grades.
Yeah.
And I'm coming in and I look at the principal across the corridor. All the kids are going to class and he has this look on his face. And I just knew instantly that it worked.
Uh-huh.
And he brought me their grades and not one of them had a failing grade.
Nice.
It was maybe a D-, but they found that if they applied themselves, if they budgeted their time, that they had somebody that believed in them, that they would put in the work.
Right.
And so finding that I'm taking these kids that nobody else wants, that they can't stand there, they're in school suspension all the time, showed them a little love, found out a little bit about who they were as human beings, and helped them learn that way, that their entire world can change. And that was probably 7 years ago. I've sent probably 5 off to the military, another 5 to missions for their church. Half of them are in college. There might be maybe 5% that didn't make it out.
Right.
Compared to 100% if you don't give them a freaking shoe up and a hug and let them know that it doesn't have to be society's way.
Yeah.
That if they put in the work, they follow their passion and they're doing good, that anything is possible.
Exactly.
Like, as I do this, I'm just like, man, I wish I would have had a me when I was going to school. I wish I would have had somebody look me in the eye and be like, you know what, this shit isn't going to matter. If you're a good person and you take care of people and you take care of your relationship, that things are going to work out. And so I've really developed that now in a better skill of, I go in and I coach teachers.
Good.
I present at the school and then we break out into breakout sessions with the students. And I have a packet like a curriculum that I've come up with that teaches them how to express themselves. Rather than depressed, anxious, sad, it's like, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling taken advantage of. I'm feeling embarrassed. Like these words that they don't know how to use. So if they can't communicate how they feel,
Correct.
Then they feel dumb. They can't use the big words. So we just teach them it's okay to feel. It's okay. Like, what masks do you use to get through your day?
Mhm.
We just made it so easy that they can just circle. It's like,
Right.
I'm the funny guy. I'm shy. I hide in the corner. I'm the jock. I'm the smart kid. Because they're all masks. And if they don't take those off at some point and learn to just be their true authentic self,
Mhm.
then they're gonna grow up to be addicts, to be in terrible marriages, to end up wanting to end their lives for decades. And I can't live that way because I have some tools and I want to share them with the world. And if I'm not willing to be vulnerable, if I'm not willing to share that, who the hell is?
Exactly. So one of the things that I'm thinking is, because a lot of our podcast is for helping parents kind of find some tips, tricks, things that will help them help their kids at home as well as through the school system. If you were to have a parent come up to you and say, my kid is one of these, what could be 3 things that they could go do or look at to maybe help them help their kids at home?
So this is my favorite part. Our kids are simply mirrors of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell the parents, go take a hard look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Are you presenting perfection in the home? Were you perfect? Did you get straight A's? Did you love yourself your entire life? Bullshit. Go get vulnerable with your kid. Go let them know that it's going to be okay. Go let them know that their 100% is going to change on a daily basis. Go give them a break. Sit in their pain with them. Don't give them a pill. Give them, sit down and be like, what are you experiencing right now? What created that experience? Were you bullied at school? How can we combat that? It's like parents want to pay me $20,000 to work with their kid. I'm like, okay, let's do a consult. And half the time I'm like, I'm going to take the 20, but I'm going to work with you. It's not the kid. You created the trauma. You've allowed them to feel less than, or you've babied them when they throw their tantrums and you've allowed it to go on. And now that's a very developed skill they have. Like, hold them accountable. Babies cry because they can't talk. If they can start to communicate and you don't use communications, they're still going to cry for things. And then you get mad because they're not developed and because they're throwing tantrums because they get off their game. It's like, you allowed it. He's 13.
Right.
At some point you should have said, hey buddy, what are you feeling? Take the time to sit with your kid. It's not math. It's not science. It's not English. It's something burning and boiling inside that doesn't feel comfortable to them. They know something's wrong. They don't know what. And you keep telling them, like, you didn't get up on time. It's like, you didn't teach me how to get up on time. You didn't make me go to bed on time until I was 13, 15.
Yeah.
It's like, teach me the skills. Let me know that you're not perfect. Let me know I can come to you with anything and not get shunned or shamed.
Yeah. I love it. That is awesome.
I wish we had someone like you growing up too.
And
you know, your story growing up is very similar to mine. I wasn't quite as athletic. I fit in a little easier. The way I was bullied, I went inside and shut down instead of acting out. So
isolation.
Yeah.
Feeling alone in a room full of people. Like, how many of us do that? How many of you feel alone in a relationship? You're laying in bed feeling damn just alone, not appreciated. And then what do you think that tells your kids?
Yeah.
You never touch your wife. You guys argue all the time and you're telling them about we're in love. Okay, so that's what love looks like. Got it.
Right. Exactly. They see everything.
It's about cleaning. Adults need to clean out their closet. They need to get the update, not the kids. Technology is not going away. Like, we got to stop.
Bringing education home, our school, it looks like we're talking about kids when we start talking about our education platform, how we're going to work with the kids, how we're going to do this. What we do has very little to do with the
parent
kids.
Coaching around all of that.
One parent, one client, it's like we're teaching them the very, very basics of scheduling at home, of when your kids get home, let them play for 45 minutes, then do the homework, then do this, then it's just really simple, basic how to live life. And it makes such a drastic impact because these are skills that just aren't being taught. The family structure is kind of breaking down. So the grandparents who had this aren't necessarily in the home. So this information that is just so vital to, again, being alive and being human is
Mhm.
the stuff that's so missing in our world right now.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're coaching the parents, and the kids are getting the benefit of that, and it looks like they're being educated, but what we're really doing is fixing the family through the parents.
Yeah, so I worked with adults originally, and I got sick of putting Band-Aids on people that weren't willing to do the work, or old life skills that maybe worked for our great grandfather, but we're not pioneers anymore. We
Right.
have other options. So them to let go of those old ideals to make rooms for new ones, I was like, I'm doing good with adults, but I want to work on prevention. So I
Right.
went to the youth and I was working on prevention, but then they'd go home and get re-indoctrinated with the bullshit their parents were doing. So I was like, now I have a company called The Village Effect,
That's
right?
good.
It takes, everybody's got to continuously grow or nothing's going to change.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm going to be breaking up families by creating these little life ninjas that are going to see their parents are full of shit. And then that creates a problem. It's like, I don't want that. I want people to grow together, but that starts with vulnerability, letting go of old things that are no longer working.
Mhm.
And that's coping skills. That's like drugs and alcohol. It saved my life. I would have killed myself in my teens if I didn't find that. But I should have put that down at some point because it almost took my life in the end.
Mhm. Exactly.
So being shy, maybe it saved you in elementary school, maybe it saved you in junior high, but as an adult, it's not going to work. You have to interview, you have to go and present to corporate people, you have to sell cars, you have to do
Not
you
as a
have to
business owner.
continuously, I like snakes, you got to shed your skin.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
if you talk to me in a year and we're having the same conversation, smack me in my face. I haven't grown and outgrown some of my beliefs even that I have now.
Mhm.
There's always holes that we can keep plugging in. You got to be willing to look at yourself and share your fails and the solution with those around you. That's not just your family. That's coworkers, that's neighborhood people, sharing in your churches. Like it's cool to get up and hear somebody that's so successful and done everything right. I don't connect with those people. I get up there with somebody who tells me like, oh, what was his name that spoke right before me? The kid with autism.
Oh,
Tucker.
Tucker Bearden.
Dude,
Right.
hearing his story and then seeing him present is just like
Yeah.
if he can do it, I can do it.
Right.
Right. And so that's what gives me hope. And I think most people that are going to identify with us, they've had some struggles. They don't want to hear about perfection. They want to hear about some serious darkness and what steps they took to get out. How did you find the light at the end of the tunnel? Because we weren't all born with just straight A's and everything came easy. Like
Well,
it just doesn't work that way.
I'm kind of going through one of those dark tunnels at the moment so I've got a lot of traumatic brain injury. Stuff doesn't work right. So the fears, the anxieties, it's not really shyness. It's like people that I know I'm supposed to make phone calls to, and it's like I'll pick up my phone call to call them, and I can't make myself push the buttons, and I'll put my phone down. And it used to not be a problem,
mhm.
but now there's this stuff going on in my head because of all of the cracks that I took. So I'm trying to learn as an adult stuff that I got right from the beginning that got knocked out of me, and it's a lot weirder. There's so many more built-in excuses stopping me. There's so much more life reasons and stuff that I have for. And then is it really the brain damage, or can I work through it? So all sorts of this stuff is going on with me right now that puts me in kind of a dark place, and my community is really helping me keep going. And
So building the village, having the community.
So one thing I did before my speeches or presentations or going into a job interview, I would start with, hey, I'm a recovering addict. I had a traumatic brain injury. I don't remember some things sometimes, and I get really anxious. All right, let's go. And they would just start laughing and it would break the ice. And then I had already spilled my dirt, and then, okay, we're good. I didn't want to fake it anymore.
Right.
And when people did that, it was just instant identification. People, they just started listening. They're like, I identify with 90% of what he just said. Let's go. So I am so imperfect, and I might slur my words and I might get off track. So if I do, get me back on track. But this is what I want to show. And just own it. Like we were talking about the cards you were dealt. You got to play the game regardless.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the middle of the game, someone's going to snatch all your cards and shuffle them up and hand you a new deck. And you're like, oh, shit.
What happened now?
Just tell them if I walk off in the middle of a conversation, it's not you.
Yeah.
No, that's so real, because he'll be doing something and he'll be in another room all of a sudden. It's like,
Yeah,
why
I
did
do
you
the
go over
same.
there?
I'll be sitting here talking to her, and I'll be talking to her, and in the middle of a
Boom, she's
conversation,
gone. It's like,
I'll suddenly be standing in another room looking at a wall, and I'm like,
Come back.
why the hell am I here? And it's like, what was I doing? And I'll go back and I'll find her, and it's like, we were just having a conversation, right? So it's really bizarre. I thought I was going
It's a real
absolutely
thing.
insane.
for a
So
while.
And for me, it happens like if I'm in a deep conversation or an uncomfortable one,
Mhm.
it's that whoop, swirl. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like a lot of people like, you just walked away from that person while they were telling you about I was like, oh,
Yeah.
go back.
yeah,
That's me. I'm not going to pretend who I am anymore. I need to I am who I am.
Yeah, and it was that deep ingrained coping mechanism.
Yeah.
You go away from something. And so even though it was their story and their trauma,
It
that's
took
how
me
you
into
were
mine.
dealing with it, But I love that you go back, because that's what people have to understand, is that when you're dealing with someone who's gone through a lot, PTSD, whatever, accept the oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to really walk away, and continue and be with it.
And it's not intentional. It's like autopilot.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I don't mindfully do that. I'm just like,
I call it bouncing off of walls, because I'll be doing something and then I'll be somewhere else in my house looking at a wall like, what?
Then coming back again.
standing in the garage like, what am I doing? I'm looking for
Why am I
Neil.
here again?
But again, we can bring it back to the beginning of your story, though, because if we're helping our kids deal with a lot of this stuff when they're younger and giving them better coping skills when they're younger, we'll have less people. I mean, traumatic brain injury, you can't do too much about that, but you can teach them better coping skills before they get to that point.
So for me, it's like bullying played a major factor. Feeling different or broken played a major factor. Not being picked by girls played a major factor. Suicidal thoughts, drugs and alcohol, having sex before I was married, all these things that in religious areas they don't want to talk about, or a parent doesn't want to be like, I had sex at 13, because they fear that gives the kid the opportunity to have sex at 13. But if you tell them what the experience was like, and that you weren't mature enough, and that it brought up emotions in you that you didn't have the coping skills for, and that drugs and alcohol helped for a minute until they didn't, and all this stuff, educating them does not give them the right to go do it. It gives them the facts that if they do, don't come crying when I told you so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My daughter knows everything.
Yeah.
What a
Don't
crack pipe looks like, what a needle looks like, what every drug looks like, how to emotionally talk about things, that I'm never gonna comfort her in a way that is gonna let her out of feeling it and healing it.
right.
She knows we're gonna handle shit as it comes. We're not gonna let it pile up. Let her know she gets way better grades than me. I don't care what your grades are. I care that you put your effort in. That's it.
Yeah.
End of story.
I got excellent grades, but
You
the
were
word
hiding.
that I hated the most when I was growing up was the word potential, because my teacher's always like, I was getting straight A's. I was getting 100% on all of the tests. And my teachers would be like, but he's not trying. He's not doing anything. He's not living up to
the
his potential. And it's like,
Yep.
so yeah, that whole, and then I actually and then when I did mess up or I did not get a perfect grade, to be teased by my teachers is like, oh, see, look, you missed one. So, I scared my teachers in a way.
Sometimes,
So yeah, they picked on me in other ways, but that separated me in a different way, because I never tried in school. I was just always got the grades. I didn't have to do anything. So I never learned how to study. I never learned how to put forth the effort into anything that I did except for sports. And I was really good at sports until
So I think with going back to the parenting question is, one, look at yourself, see if it's being projected down to them, if it's insecurities you have that now they're developing and you're wondering why. But then also remove your own personal belief, remove your religious belief, whatever it is, and look at the data. We didn't have Google. We didn't have all this stuff back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right.
Now we do. We have decades and decades of proven techniques of how to help your kids. Also, don't wait until it's a crisis.
Mhm.
Hold them accountable. Have some boundaries in the home. Have some expectations with risk and or with reward and consequence
Mhm.
that you develop with your kid, so that
Right.
when they don't do it, you can be like, that's your handwriting right there. Like, you made that consequence. I didn't make that consequence.
Right.
I'm not taking your phone. You didn't do what you did, so you're losing your phone. There's a difference.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just holding you accountable because I love you.
Mhm.
So if you want to play games all weekend, then you need to study, and this is the study program. 45 on, 10 minutes of play, 25 on, 10 minutes of play, finish. Whatever it is, but if they're just winging it, kids aren't meant to wing it.
Nope.
They're meant to play during playtime, but if you let them have playtime during study time, they're not getting anything done.
Exactly.
And they'll never find their
And it-
greatness.
And teacher, entrepreneur, doing stuff together. Our youngest son was in that kind of left out of everything kind of a stage. We thought we were doing well. We thought we were, but later in life, he kind of, we became disrespectful in his view. We lost our communication with him.
Yeah.
And he's no longer really part of our life at the moment because of that lack of communication, that lack of structure. And, we are now actually trying to help people avoid
all of that.
that.
Yeah.
To it's like, wow, it really hurts. So part of, and 30-year teacher, and our kids aren't perfect either. And so, yeah, it's just really devastating on this side when the kids have problems and you don't take care of it as well. So for the parental side, keeping your kids.
And I think there's a authoritarian where you're dominant and you're just telling them what they're doing wrong all the time and super strict like that. You got to find a happy medium of each kid.
Right.
Because as you have new kids, you're at a different place than you were with the first kid. So they don't get the same parenting. They don't get the same parent.
Right.
So it's important that you learn their love languages, their body language, and how to operate the same lesson, but taught differently.
Yeah.
And constantly checking yourself, seeing, revamping every month. How did this go? This was a disaster. Little Johnny acted out, but Stacy did well. We're going to continue with Stacy. We're going to change things up for little Johnny.
Yes.
Got to treat every person as an individual. That's another thing that the cookie cutter school system is like, do this for everybody. And
ultimately, just stand up for schools is parents aren't doing their job.
No.
Teachers' hands are tied because of the parents. So it's like, we can't even teach. And every kid has anxiety and depression. So they're putting out fires all day long and they're not getting to the curriculum, which they are paid by their performance. And if I have to help 6 people talk them off of an anxiety attack, I'm not getting my job done. And all these other kids are losing out.
Yep.
So one thing we teach them is to identify mental health issues early on so they can refer them out of class to get the help they need to thrive. And help the parents also see and get everybody on the same playing field. And if your kid needs extra help, they need to go to a specialized school or they need to be in special classes. But parents are like, I don't want my kid in resource. He's going to feel different. It's like, he is in resource. He needs resource.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be realistic with what's going on.
Stop
And
thinking
don't get mad
about
at the
what it looks
teacher.
like and start thinking about what it feels like and how to be human.
Fix it.
Because it's like, because looks, if you're just doing stuff based on looks, your life is going to just be falling apart.
Yeah. And it's like, don't get mad at the teacher who has to spend 8 hours with 100 different kids that are disrespectful when you're not even getting respected in your own home.
Right.
Like, it starts in the home. I don't care what anybody says. You have the opportunity to set a parameter of how you're going to act, what we're going to stand for. This is the game plan to do so. And you do that when you're not in the home. If you go to and disrespect a teacher or you're causing problems in class or whatever else, we have some things we need to do at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not like the teacher didn't give them blah, 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 blah. It's like, what did you give them?
Right.
You have all summer, you have hours at night, you have weekends, you raise them up out the womb.
Yep.
And this stuff starts at like 2.
Exactly. Yes.
one of Christina's last years in building with as a teacher, there was a kindergartner that started swearing at the teacher.
At the kindergarten
At
teacher.
the kindergartner was swearing at the teacher. And when they brought the mom in, the mom was like, well, what did you do to my kid to make him swear at you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Everything
those are just
like
blinders, and a lot of parents suck at parenting and they need to bring in a maid or a nanny. Like, you don't have to be good at that. If you're not a good stay-at-home mom, go get a job so that the time you are excited to see your kid, you don't get burned out from them all day long.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
And
Parenting doesn't mean taking care of, it means preparing. And that might mean bringing in some other people who can prepare them a little better.
that's what I was just going to say. You know, we get business coaches, we get life coaches, get a parenting coach. If it's not working for you, if it's not going well, get a parenting coach, get
an education coach.
get an education coach, get somebody who will help you through those steps.
Because an education coach will also help structure the family around education, which gives the family structure, the whole family structure around the children. So it's a start. And then once they get their foothold in, once they see those changes, then to watch their eyes light up and their families come together and start to put pieces in. It's not always smooth. There's always ups and downs. There's rough bumps, but the communication starts, the education starts, like you see. And once that starts, then the community really starts to get a hold of it and thrive with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a major thing is, I don't care what it is. You got to take a hard look at yourself first. Look at the things that aren't working, what are working, the things you want to change, and then just be open and honest with your kids. And I think people my age, your age, what we experienced in high school and college, these kids are experiencing in elementary school.
Yeah.
So the age appropriate thing has like dropped like 15 years. Kids are doing meth in elementary school. They're having sex in elementary school. You need to have the talk.
Yeah.
Like, I hear some crazy stuff. I deal with some crazy stuff. And this is in protected Utah. So I can only imagine outside of that, where it's not as structured and not as so much accountability in these melting pot cities of what's happening or what they're seeing at home or what Pornhub's doing for them, or like, you got to get real with your kids sooner.
Yeah.
Well, and make sure your actions at home match your words.
Yes.
You know, it's slap mom and be like, well, I love her, son. And they get mad when he hits a girl.
Right.
Come on.
They watch you. They see.
It's gotta, they know. They're not dumb. I'm seeing this, I'm feeling this. What mommy and daddy tell me, do not hook the two together.
Don't connect. Right. Exactly.
That creates trauma.
Amazing talking with you. I love your insight. I love the connections that you're making and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have coming up? Because we always want to support the people that we chat with. And so let us know how to get a hold of you. And of course, we'll put things in the show notes and things as well.
So I've got my book coming out. It's going to be called Warrior in the Garden, which is basically my memoir, talking about all these things we talked about today, but deeper into those stories. And then also the solutions out, and my upcome from being homeless and addicted for 18 years to now being a multi-six-figure, multi-business owning entrepreneur. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that should be coming out in like June, between June and September. We're about done with the book, and we'll turn it over to the publishing here pretty quick in the next month. And do a lot of speaking, things like that. So if you like what I have to say and you want me to come out to a corporate event or a school or church event, get at me. But most of my stuff is done on Instagram at Tattooed Life Coach and the number 8, and then Rob Eastman on Facebook. And then my new website just dropped, and it is robeastmancoaching.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
And then I also have a podcast. It's called Stand and Fight.
Nice.
So
to any of our listeners who are listening, I met Rob. He is a fabulous man. As you can see, he walks his talk. That is so important in these days and day and age. There are so many people who, especially coaches out there, who say one thing, but that's not how they live their life. This man is living his life. He is talking it, he is sharing it. That's how he can talk so fluently about it, because he's not making anything up. He's just telling his life and he's sharing it to a beautiful, beneficial purpose. So I have so much respect for this man here who is walking his talk and moving through life in such an inspirational manner, just helping all of the other beings on this planet, because as he helps one, that ripples out. So Rob, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you do. I so appreciate. I wish that I was at a point where I could be as impactful as you are on an individual basis. So thank you so much for what you're doing, for being here. You are so important to this planet.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys as well, and honored to be on here. And I look forward to both of your success, and I can't wait to watch your journey.
Oh, it's going to be fun. It's amazing.
All right, audience, that is it for today. Thank you very much. Make sure you look at the show notes, leave us a review, leave us a little like, let us know how we're doing for you.
And follow up with Rob.
Exactly.
Check out his page, follow some of his stuff, get in touch with him, because you will not be disappointed. And so that's it for now.
See you all next week.